Hey guys, it's me, Mr. Plastic. What we're going to be talking about today is the urinary system. So when we take a look at the urinary system, we know the urinary system's primary responsibility is to clean your blood. So urinary system, we take a look at it, it's going to clean your blood. If we take a look at a model here, this is how much blood goes through your kidneys every single minute. So that's a lot of blood that's going through your kidneys every single minute. Take a look at that. That's a lot of blood going through your kidneys every single minute. Out of all this blood that's going through your kidneys every single minute, we produce about this much urine. So right here is the amount of urine that we produce every single minute. That's just one little raindrop of urine that we're producing every single minute. Now this little raindrop of urine every single minute adds up, and this is how much urine we produce in a day. So you can see this is how much urine that we produce in a day. That's a lot of urine that we're producing in a day. So that little raindrop of urine that we produce every single minute, it adds up. It adds up over time. So what is the major functions of the urinary system? One of the major functions is going to be to eliminate waste products from your body. Some of the waste products that get eliminated from your body are nitrogenous waste. When we look at nitrogenous waste, and nitrogenous waste is from the metabolic breakdown of proteins. So you may have heard of things called urea, ammonia, uric acid. These are all examples of nitrogenous waste that are eliminated via the urinary system. Also, toxins are going to be eliminated from your body. Your body produces a variety of toxins that then your urinary system is going to help get rid of, as well as drugs that you may ingest. They're all going to be eliminated via the urinary system. We have to also take a look at the homeostatic balance that the urinary system provides us with. Your urinary system is going to help regulate your water balance. Your urinary system is going to help regulate your electrolyte balance. It's going to help regulate your acid-base balance in your blood. It's going to help regulate your blood pressure. It's going to help regulate your red blood cell production. It's also going to cause the activation of vitamin D inside of your body. Remember, we need vitamin D in order to have strong bones, because vitamin D allows calcium to be absorbed into bones, and your urinary system plays a major role in the production of that vitamin D, or activating that vitamin D into a usable form. So the major organs that we have of the urinary system are the kidneys, your ureters, and then your ureters drain into the bladder, and then the bladder drains into the urethra, and then the urethra is going to drain into the toilet. So these are the major organs that we have of the urinary system. This right here is a diagram of the urinary system. You can see you have the kidneys are located right here is the kidneys, okay? Then you have a tube that leads the kidneys. This is what we call the ureter. The ureter goes into the bladder, okay? This is your bladder that's right here. And then leaving your bladder that they have right here, this is going to be called your urethra. So those are the major organs that we have of the urinary system. So the positioning of your kidneys go from about your T12 to about your L3 vertebrae. So they go from about your T12 to your L3 vertebrae. Your right kidney tends to sit a little bit lower than your left kidney due to the positioning of the liver. So your right kidney tends to sit a little bit lower due to the actual positioning of your liver than the left kidney. Your kidneys are about the size, if you want like equivalent, like how big are your kidneys? Your kidneys are about the size of a bar of soap. So when I take a look at the kidneys, they have a little indentation inside of them that's called the renal hilum. So when I look at a kidney, this is a kidney that's right here. All right. This little indentation right here, okay, that I'm pointing to, that's called the renal hilum. So that's called the renal hilum. And then in this renal hilum is where you're going to have the tubes that are coming in and leaving the kidney. Tubes that are going to be leaving are going to be your ureter is going to be leaving the kidneys. You're going to have your renal artery is going to be coming into this particular area itself, as well as your renal vein is going to be coming into this particular area itself as well. But this whole area right here is called your renal hilum. And this is where you have all these tubes coming in and out of the kidney. Remember, your renal artery is going to be providing the kidney with blood, and then leaving the kidney you have the renal vein, which is going to have that clean blood in it, that blood that's been filtered and cleaned. And then also leaving this renal hilum area is your ureter. Your ureter is going to be carrying that urine down into the bladder itself. At the top of your kidneys up here, you have a gland that sits at the top of your kidneys. This gland at the top of your kidneys is called the adrenal gland. So at the very top of your kidneys, you have a massive glandular tissue that's hanging out right here. This is going to be your adrenal gland that's hanging out up here. And this adrenal gland we talked about in the endocrine system, it produces a variety of hormones. Things like adrenaline are produced here. A hormone called aldosterone is also produced here. Your cortisols are produced here as well in this adrenal gland. All right, so when we take a look at a kidney has 3 distinct regions that you have to be aware of. All right, and I'm just going to kind of shade these in. All right, the very outside, okay, of the kidney is called the renal capsule. So this very outside right here is called the renal capsule. If I cut a kidney open, this first layer that I see right here is called the renal cortex. So this is all the renal cortex, this right here. So that's the renal cortex. Then you have the next layer that you see, this middle layer that you see right here is called the renal medulla. So this is all the renal medulla. And this diagram here is depicted in yellow, is the renal medulla. And then you have this inner layer that's here. This is what we call the renal pelvis. All right, so this is the renal pelvis that's right here. Now there's some features that are distinguishing among each of these layers that I'm going to talk about now. When I look at the renal medulla, you have these triangle-shaped structures that kind of look like this, okay? And these are called medullary pyramids, all right? So you have medullary pyramids that sit like this. This is another medullary pyramid that's here, all right? And you guys get the idea. There's going to be another medullary pyramid. It's going to sit here. It's going to sit here. It's going to sit here. And these medullary pyramids, if you look at them real close, they kind of have like a banding-like appearance. That looks like that. When I take a look at the renal pelvis has these little extensions that we call calyx. So this is the renal pelvis that's right here. And you can see off of the renal pelvis, you have these little extensions that we call the calyx. And basically, urine's going to basically drain into these calyx. You have major calyx, you have minor calyx. You kind of think of it like a creek. A creek goes into a stream goes into a river goes into a lake. Or the ocean. And that's the same thing that's going on here. So basically you have these little tiny filtration units inside the kidney that help clean your blood. They're called nephrons. And they're going to drain their waste products this way. Okay, so these waste products are going to drain this way through the renal medulla and then into the renal pelvis. First they get picked up by the calyx though. So some of these will get picked up by this calyx that will then drain in the renal pelvis. The renal pelvis then drains into the ureter that's here. And then the ureter is going to drain into the bladder. And then the bladder is going to drain into the urethra. Right here we have a tube that's coming in. This is my renal artery that's bringing blood into the kidneys. And then you have a renal vein that is going to carry blood away from the kidneys. All right, so those are kind of the major structures that you have when we take a look at the kidney. Remember this indentation that's right here? Okay, we have all these tubes coming in and out. That's, again, it's called the renal hilum. All right, again, just so we're on the same page. This is an actual kidney itself, a real life kidney. Right here is your cortex. Right here is your renal medulla. And then right here is your renal pelvis that's hanging out right here. These extensions that come off the pelvis are called the calyx. Inside the renal medulla, you have these triangle-like structures that are called medullary pyramids. Remember, the goal is kind of to clean your blood. A quarter of your blood goes through your kidneys every single minute. And as we clean the blood, that urine is going to drain this way. And then it's going to go down the ureter itself. The kidneys do have fat that surrounds it, and sometimes you get a condition if you lose an excessive amount of weight. amount of fat around your kidneys. And what can happen is with the ureter, because the ureter doesn't have that fat to kind of keep it in place, is that your ureter kind of kinks and it closes up that hose, and then that urine backflows into your kidneys, and it can cause a variety of issues, including death. So what we really want to do is we really want to take a look at the true superstar of the kidneys and what's actually cleaning the blood and filtering this blood and removing the things that our body doesn't need at that particular time inside the blood. And the true little superstars of the kidney is you really can't see them. They're these microscopic structures that we call nephrons. So we take a look at the kidney and then we zoom in, 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 and we finally arrive right here at these little structures here that we call nephrons. And these are the structures that are going to actually clean and filter this blood. They're going to allow the blood to keep the things in that are needed, and it's going to remove the things that aren't needed from the blood, all in these little tiny structures here that we call nephrons. You have two different types of nephrons that I'm going to address next, and I'm going to show you. You have a cortical nephron, and this one hangs out primarily in the renal cortex. Okay? And then you have another set of nephrons that hang out just a little bit lower. They're called a juxtamedullary nephron, and they hang out a little bit into the renal medulla as well. So one sits a little bit higher than the other, but those are the two different types of nephrons that you have inside of your body. So we have to know kind of the anatomy of the nephron is one of the things that you're going to be asked on the upcoming tests that you guys have. And this is kind of the basic anatomy of the nephron, is that you have an arterial coming in. We call it the afferent arterial. So blood's going to come in here, okay, and then it's going to go into this knot of capillaries right here. This knot of capillaries I'm going to label with a G. This knot of capillaries is called your glomerulus. Okay, so this knot of capillaries I labeled with a G is called your glomerulus. Anything that is small enough inside the blood gets filtered out. Okay, anything that is small enough inside the blood gets filtered out inside the glomerulus. So these little tiny dots that I'm drawing right here are what we call filtrate. So things that get filtered out, they make their way from the glomerulus into a structure that's called the Bowman's capsule. So this structure right here, okay, this is called the Bowman's capsule. That's right here. All right. So this is called the Bowman's capsule. That's right here. And then from the Bowman's capsule, this filtrate, remember if I'm small enough, I made my way through the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule. This filtrate now is going to make its way into what we call the renal tubules. And the renal tubules consists of the proximal convoluted tubule. Okay, so this right here is all the proximal convoluted tubule. All right. And then as we're coming down here, we have the loop of Henle. So starting right now is the loop of Henle. This right here is called the loop of Henle. Okay. And I'm going to color that a different color for you, make it a little bit better. This structure in blue here is called the loop of Henle. All right, so this structure right here is called the loop of Henle. And then on the other side of the loop of Henle, which I will color in, let's make it green. This is called the distal convoluted tubule. This is called the distal convoluted tubule. That's right here. And then off of the distal convoluted tubule, we have these structures that are called collecting ducts. And multiple nephrons can hook up to one collecting duct. So multiple nephrons can hook up to one collecting duct. And then once I leave the collecting duct, I'm officially called urine. Okay, so once I leave the collecting duct, I'm officially called urine. Sometimes you have molecules or substances that are too big that did not get filtered out inside the glomerulus, and they're going to leave the glomerulus via this structure right here that's called the efferent arteriole. So you have the afferent arteriole, and then you have this structure that's right here that's called the efferent arteriole. Now this efferent arteriole comes around, and then it's going to wrap around, okay, it's going to wrap around the renal tubules. So these capillaries that wrap around the renal tubules, the proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle, and distal convoluted tubule, are called pertubulary capillaries. So these capillaries that wrap around are called the pertubulary capillaries that are wrapping around the nephron tubules. So you can kind of think of it like this, okay? This is my fist that's right here, okay? This right here is the afferent arteriole. My fist right here is my glomerulus. Right here's my glomerulus. Say hi, glomerulus. Hi, glomerulus. Right here's my glomerulus. Okay. Surrounding my glomerulus, I have my Bowman's capsule. Okay. So glomerulus, Bowman's capsule. 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 Okay. So this is my Bowman's capsule that's right here that's surrounding the glomerulus. Okay, my glomerulus is going to filter things out of it inside the blood that are small enough, and it makes its way into the Bowman's capsule that's right here. All right, this Bowman's capsule, the substances that make it inside this Bowman's capsule are what we call filtrate. Okay, so we're now officially making our way into the renal tubules. When we're inside the renal tubules, that proximal convoluted tubule, that loop of Henle, that distal convoluted tubule, we're officially called filtrate. So that's where we get that term filtrate. We get that term filtrate from the things that got filtered out from the glomerulus. Now you have to remember that your nephron filtered things out that your body still may have needed. Okay, so your nephron filtered out a lot of things that your body still needed, because remember, the name of the game was that glomerulus just filtered things out that were small enough. If you were small enough, whether your body needed it or not, it still got to go into that renal tubule. Okay, so there's going to be some processes that are going to occur inside of this nephron, where the nephron is going to take things, where your bloodstream is going to want to take things back into it, okay, because your body needs it. And there are some substances your body really didn't need to begin with that your body's still going to get rid of. Okay, so we have some process that we're going to introduce next that are going to be called reabsorption and secretion inside the nephron. That's reabsorption. Remember, reabsorption, I want you back. Okay, reabsorption is your body saying, hey, you know what? I really didn't mean to get rid of you. I want you back. I want you back inside the body is what I want you to do. I didn't want you to leave the bloodstream. I wanted you back all along. Okay, so that's one process that we have. It's called reabsorption. Secretion is when we get rid of a substance that may have been too large. Okay, that your body realizes, hey, I really don't need this. I didn't get rid of this during the filtration process, so now I'm just going to take it from the actual capillaries that surround the nephron and put it back into the renal tubules themselves. Now, this can be molecules that are really big molecules that we didn't get filtered out. It can also be things like hydrogen and things like that. Your body realizes it has to adjust to help maintain that acid-base balance inside the body. So let's take a look at some of these substances from an individual perspective, okay, as far as substances inside of your blood. So the first substance that we have here is urea. So urea is hanging out right here. Remember, urea is from the metabolic breakdown of proteins. It's a waste product from proteins. Let's see how it travels through this actual nephron itself. So urea is up to bat. Here comes urea. And I'm going to move over here. And urea is in the glomerulus, it's in the proximal convoluted tubule. It's now in the loop of Henle. Coming up the loop of Henle, it's now in the distal convoluted tubule. And now it's going down the actual collecting ducts themselves, where it's going to become urine. So here is a substance that went through the whole entire nephron itself, and it became urine. Okay, your body didn't need it. Your body just said, hey, we're going to get rid of it. We're not going to try to reabsorb you or do anything like that with it. Let's take a look at another substance here like glucose, okay? Your body needs glucose, okay? Your body needs glucose because your body needs glucose to help with ATP production. So your body should not be getting rid of glucose. But let's watch what happens to glucose, because glucose initially is going to get filtered out, but now we're going to see this process that we call reabsorption occurring. So let's take a look at glucose. So here's glucose. Glucose is hanging out right here. It's about to go into the afferent arteriole and then into the glomerulus. Here we go. Into the glomerulus, into the Bowman's capsule, and the proximal convoluted tubule. And look what happened right there. Right there, it got reabsorbed into the bloodstream. Okay, so this is your body. This is what we call reabsorption. It's taking it from these renal tubules and putting it back into your bloodstream because your body needed it. Okay, because your body needed it. Now, there are some metabolic disorders that we have in which your body gets rid of glucose inside the urine. Okay, Like when we take a look at diabetes, your type 1 diabetes is that your bloodstream's flooded with sugar because the sugar can't make its way into the cells, so your body excretes this actual glucose inside of your urine. So one of the ways that you can tell if you have a form of diabetes is that your urine has a sweet smell, almost an apple-like smell to it. That's a sure sign that you have some problems and you're going to want to get those checked out because your body's no longer retaining that glucose. Now, when you take a look at things like water, water is going to get reabsorbed, but then some of this water actually doesn't get reabsorbed and makes its way into your urine. Remember, water is a good universal solvent and things like that. So we'll see water go through here, and you'll see some of this water gets reabsorbed right there. Some of this water gets reabsorbed right there, and then some of this water is also going to get reabsorbed in the actual collecting ducts themselves. So, all right, so some of this water is going to get reabsorbed into the actual collecting ducts themselves. I want to take this time now to take a look at a hormone that's going to help regulate the water balance inside of your body. It's called vasopressin. It's also called antidiuretic hormone. What vasopressin and antidiuretic hormone do, okay, remember they're produced by the hypothalamus, stored in the posterior pituitary. Their major target is the kidneys. Antidiuretic hormone and vasopressin are exactly the same things. They're exactly the same things. But what they're going to do is they actually cause your actual kidneys to retain water. Okay, so this could be a time in which your body is low on water. Okay, it could be because you're dehydrated. You have these structures that are called osmoreceptors, and I'm not really going to get really nerdy with you on this, but you have these structures called osmoreceptors that become stimulated when there's less pressure exerted on them in the actual hypothalamus. Okay, so these are little receptors that kind of detect the amount of pressure that's being exerted on them from the walls of a capillary inside of your brain that runs through the hypothalamus. Okay, so blood vessels that run through the hypothalamus, you have these little structures called osmoreceptors. They kind of become stimulated when there's low pressure. Well, there's low pressure on them because you have lack of water inside your bloodstream. Because you have this lack of water inside your bloodstream, these receptors become stimulated. Okay, they allow a neuron to generate electrical impulse that communicates to the posterior pituitary that causes this posterior pituitary to release a hormone called vasopressin. Okay, remember your posterior pituitary is just a structure on the pituitary that stores hormones that were produced by the hypothalamus. This vasopressin then is going to target your kidneys, and what it causes your kidneys to do is it causes these collecting ducts right here. Okay, so these are your collecting ducts right here. It causes these collecting ducts right here. Oops, let me go back. It causes these collecting ducts right here to actually produce more water channels. Okay, so when antidiuretic hormone is secreted, okay, you're going to see now water can get reabsorbed. So water is going from the collecting duct back into the actual pretubular capillaries into your bloodstream. That's the effect that vasopressin or antidiuretic hormone has. It causes these nephrons, the collecting ducts of a nephron, to produce more water channels to allow more water reabsorption to occur. Now, you may have heard of these substances that we call antidiuretic, or we call these substances diuretics. Okay? A diuretic can be a thing like alcohol. A diuretic can be a thing like caffeine. And what these do is they inhibit the release of this antidiuretic hormone. So now you have an opportunity inside your body where your body is becoming dehydrated. Vasopressin is not being released. I'm not reabsorbing more water. I'm going to continue to get rid of water. My urine is going to be really clear all the time, and I'm going to wind up with like a pain in the brain. They may have heard of what's called a hangover. When a person is severely dehydrated, they get this pain in their brain because the neurons are alerting you that, hey, we're really low on water. And that's all as a result of your body not having the ability to release the actual vasopressin or antidiuretic hormone. Now you can also have a sorry, I pressed that button there. Thought I was pressing the stop button on the camera there, but I pressed the wrong button. It's okay. So that's why there's that awkward pause. There was an awkward pause there because I pressed the wrong button, but that's okay. We have another disorder that occurs, happens a lot of times in younger kids and things like that. It's called diabetes insipidus. And with diabetes insipidus, what's happening is it's the inability. You may have a tumor around your pituitary, but you lack the ability to produce or to release that antidiuretic hormone. So you're constantly going to be producing this dilute urine all the time. So if you're constantly producing this dilute urine, remember your urine is constantly clear in color. You might always have a headache too. That's a sign that you might have a disorder that's called diabetes insipidus, and that you're not producing this particular vasopressin in large quantities or lack the ability to do that. In little kids, you notice that they tend to wet the bed with diabetes insipidus, and that's one problem that can result from the lack of production of that vasopressin. Again, that's diabetes insipidus. All right, so we kind of talked a little bit about vasopressin and antidiuretic hormone. Now, there's another hormone that's called aldosterone that's secreted by that adrenal gland that regulates your sodium concentration inside of your blood. But you kind of have to remember that water always follows salt. So when this aldosterone is released, basically what's going to happen is sodium, okay, so sodium gets reabsorbed back into the bloodstream. So sodium gets reabsorbed. So this is our sodium. It gets reabsorbed back into the bloodstream is what it's going to do. Okay. So this sodium that gets reabsorbed, if sodium gets reabsorbed into the bloodstream, so if this is my bloodstream that's right here, and I have more sodium that's in here, what's that going to do to my water inside my bloodstream? And this is why we always say that you want to have a diet that's low in sodium. If I have cells that are surrounding, okay, this capillary that has this increased levels of sodium because this new hormone aldosterone has been released, these cells are going to give up their water. So this cell gives up its water. This cell gives up its water. This cell gives up its water. Okay? Because we have these cells that are giving up their water to try to counteract the amount of sodium that's in here, the amount of solute that's in here, your blood pressure is going to rise as a result of this. Okay? So your blood pressure rises as a result of this. So when you have increased levels of sodium inside the bloodstream, your blood pressure rises because the cells of your body give up this actual water to counteract the balance of this actual salt itself. So it increases our blood pressure. So the name of the hormone is called aldosterone. It's released from the adrenal cortex. And it's released from the adrenal gland, and it's going to cause the sodium levels to increase inside of your blood. And as a result of sodium levels increasing inside of your blood, the amount of water inside your blood is also going to increase because water always follows salt. So those are those two important hormones that you guys have to be aware of. The one is vasopressin, and the other one is that aldosterone that we just addressed there. All right, let's take a look at some of these other substances that we have. Let's take a look at protein. Your body wants to hold on to protein because it needs to break down proteins to break them down for amino acids. So your body's going to hold on to these proteins. So we can see our proteins are really large molecules. You can see our proteins are relatively large molecules that are right here. And they never even get reabsorbed, okay? They never even get reabsorbed, okay? They never even got filtered out to begin with, so there was no reabsorption that could ever occur. Your body just holds on to proteins that are there. But let's say that this was a drug molecule, okay? Let's go in the land of make-believe, and let's say that this was a drug molecule. So rather than be a protein, we're going to make this a drug molecule, okay? This is some type of drug that you took, all right? Could be an aspirin, let's say, all right, let's say this was a drug. That's here. All right. And we're going to play this right here, this drug. Okay, this green molecule is the drug that you took. And we're going to pause it right here. Okay, so this drug molecule was clearly too big. Okay, this drug molecule was clearly too big. It couldn't get filtered out, okay, in the glomerulus. But your body still doesn't need this drug. Okay, so your body still doesn't need this. All right. So what's going to happen is it's something that's called opposite than secretion, Remember, opposite than reabsorption, it's called secretion. So during secretion, what's happening is these pertubulary capillaries are giving up the substance to the actual renal tubules. Okay, so if this was a drug, then what's going to happen is it didn't get filtered out here. It was too big. Your body still didn't need it. It goes in these pertubulary capillaries. And then in the pertubulary capillaries, what happens is these pertubulary capillaries give up this drug molecule to the renal tubule, so this drug can make its way into your actual urine itself. So this drug can make its way in your actual urine. And when it makes its way, it can make its way actually into the renal tubules. When it makes its way into the renal tubules, it eventually has a chance to go down the collecting ducts and become urine, is what's going to happen. And that process is what we call secretion. So secretion is opposite of reabsorption. Secretion is going from the capillaries, the pertubulary capillaries, into the renal tubules. That's what we call secretion. So this process is called secretion. And you guys you have to remember that out of all this stuff that gets into the actual renal tubule itself, the majority of it's going to get reabsorbed. The majority of it's going to get reabsorbed. If I have like a visual representation of it, which I'm going to show you next, it looks a little bit like this. So this stuff here is filtrate, okay? This is going to represent filtrate that's right here. Okay, what I mean by this filtrate, remember, is this substance that makes its way into the renal tubules. Okay, so anything that makes its way into these renal tubules is called filtrate. So all that substance there is filtrate. Okay, out of all of this filtrate that we have right here, the bulk of this filtrate, okay, the bulk of this filtrate that's right here, okay, gets reabsorbed. Okay, most of this filtrate, this is how much filtrate you produce every single minute. Okay, the bulk of this filtrate becomes reabsorbed. Okay, it makes its way back into the bloodstream. All right, this is how much waste product that you're producing every minute. Okay, so remember at the beginning of this, I showed you how much blood that we produce. Okay, and then I took that blood and I said, well, this is how much urine you produce in a day. Well, this is how much waste product you're just producing in a minute. So from all this filtrate every single minute, you're just producing this much waste. Okay, so a lot of this stuff gets reabsorbed, okay, back into the bloodstream is what's going to happen. Hopefully that makes sense to you, that reabsorption and that secretion thing. Now, as far as secretion is concerned, things that get secreted, they don't have to be like really large molecules that are getting secreted. Hydrogen and potassium are two things that we also are able to go through the secretion process. We use this movement of hydrogen as we go through this process in secretion to help maintain our actual blood pH, is what we're going to do. So just don't think of secretion as just for large molecules. Your body's going to monitor different things in the blood, and it may realize towards the end of this actual process that, hey, we really need to get rid of more of this. So it will actually go through the process of secretion in order to maintain things like your blood pH. Again, this is what I just talked about a little bit earlier about the three things that are needed for urine formation. They're located right there. You have to have glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, and tubular secretion are the three things that have to occur for urine formation to be able to happen. That's what this diagram is showing you. You can see that in the glomerulus is where filtration occurs. Okay, and then you have your tubular reabsorption going from the tubule back into the pertubulary capillaries, and then you have your secretion going from the pertubulary capillaries back into the actual renal tubules. Good diagram of a nephron. Okay, good diagram of a nephron that you can kind of see all the bits and pieces of it that's there. We talked about urine formation. Okay, we talked about urine formation. Note that the glomerulus, it's a passive process. It's if you're small enough, basically you're going to make your way through the glomerulus and become filtrate in the actual Bowman's capsule is what you're going to do. So we talked about tubular reabsorption. These are some things that get reabsorbed. Water gets reabsorbed, glucose gets reabsorbed, amino acids get reabsorbed. A lot of your ions are going to get reabsorbed. Some of your reabsorption is passive. Most of it's an active process, is what it's going to be. Remember, passive a lot of times is going from that high to low concentration. Active could be going from from low concentration to high concentration, is what it could be as far as that net movement of molecules. Can either be passive, but most of it is an active process. Tubular secretion. Some materials are going to move from the blood into the renal tubules. Okay, these are some examples of those molecules that are going to move in that particular direction. Drug molecules move this particular way. This is the creatinine is the your muscle cells produce this, and this goes through the process of secretion. This hydrogen and potassium ions, these ions are going to be used to help maintain your actual pH of your blood. This is a good diagram here showing you where all the substances get reabsorbed or secreted at. When you take a look at this diagram here, you can see the bulk of your substances get secreted or reabsorbed in the proximal convoluted tubule. That gives the nephron enough time, okay, to kind of adjust things as it goes through this. We don't want to have reabsorption occurring, all the reabsorption occurring in the collecting duct, because then we don't have enough time to make corrections if corrections are going to be needed. All right, so this is just showing you where these processes occur as far as reabsorption and secretion are going. You can see drugs and poisons, the green arrow that's here, are all being representative of secretion. Okay, this is secretion here, secretion here. These ones going out of the renal tubules, that process is called reabsorption. So hopefully you understand reabsorption, you understand secretion, you understand the substances that's inside the actual renal tubules is called this filtrate. Okay, this is called filtrate, and 99.9% of this filtrate gets reabsorbed. Very few of this filtrate actually becomes this actual waste product that would become that becomes urine. So these are the characteristics that we have of urine. So when we take a look at urine, if we do urinalysis, in about 24 hours you produce about 1 to 1.8 liters of urine. I showed you guys that a little bit earlier, that big jug that I had. We talked about the differences between urine and filtrate. Okay, filtrate, most of it becomes gets reabsorbed. Very few of that filtrate actually becomes urine. So when we take a look at urine itself, urine has a yellow-like pigment that's associated with it due to the degradation of hemoglobin. So when hemoglobin breaks down, when your red blood cell breaks down, your mature red blood cell is just a giant sack of hemoglobin is all that it is. When this hemoglobin breaks down, it becomes urochrome. Okay, urochrome has a yellow-like pigment that's associated with it. You may have had a bruise underneath your skin, and you may note that the bruise eventually becomes a yellow color. That yellow color is the actual urochrome that's dissipating into your actual skin itself, giving that yellow-like appearance. So that red blood cell is breaking down underneath your skin, and when that red blood cell breaks down, it gives a yellow-like color. That's the hemoglobin that's breaking down and becoming urochrome. So urochrome is what's giving urine that actual yellow-like color. Urine is relatively sterile. Has a slight pungent smell that's associated with it. Has a pH of around 6. We normally find sodium, potassium, urea, uric acid, all these metabolic wastes from proteins, ammonia, bicarbonate ions are normally what we find in urine. So when we're doing urine analysis, these are things we expect to see in the urine. Okay, these are things we don't expect to see in urine. We don't expect to see glucose in urine. Okay, remember your body wants to hold on to glucose. Okay, if you have glucose inside your urine, it's a sign that you have diabetes. It could be gestational diabetes. Diabetes is brought on as a result of pregnancies. Could be your type 1 diabetes that we've talked about in class. You're not going to want to find any proteins inside of your urine. Remember, your body wants to hold on to proteins due to the fact that your body breaks down these proteins for amino acids. If you have high levels of proteins inside of your urine, it could be a sign that you have some type of kidney failure or some type of severe kidney damage or kidney trauma. In particular, you should never find any red blood cells. Red blood cells are very indicative of that kidney trauma that you could have. You never want to find erythrocytes inside of your urine. That's kidney failure, kidney trauma, those types of things. I misspoke earlier. Sorry. The blood proteins, because I'm not going to be able to edit this out, the blood proteins, that could be a sign. If I do find some proteins inside of my urine, that could be a sign that I'm overexerting myself. Okay, so that doesn't mean that you have kidney failure or anything like that. But one of the reasons that we do find some proteins inside of our urine is it could because we had like a hard workout, we overexerted ourselves to some degree. We can find those particular proteins inside of our urine. Red blood cells are going to be a sign that you have some type of kidney trauma, kidney failure. You should never be peeing out blood. You should never be peeing out blood. Hemoglobin can be a sign that you've had a transfusion reaction. Okay, if you're finding not urochrome, but hemoglobin, you have that that clumping of the actual blood itself. That can be a sign that you had a transfusion reaction, got mismatched blood. White blood cells you should never find in your urine. If you do find white blood cells in your urine, that's a sign that you have a urinary tract infection. So that's a sign that you have a UTI, a urinary tract infection. Because what happens is white blood cells always follow where the point of infection. So if you have a urinary tract infection, those white blood cells are going to follow into your urinary tract, and you're going to eliminate them via when you urinate. Women are more likely to get a UTI than men due to the actual positioning of their actual their urethra. The male's urethra hangs off the body. The female's urethra goes through the walls of the vagina. And because of that, it's not as long. And because of that, it hangs out in closer proximity to your anal opening. Therefore, you have a chance to get more bacterium and things like that in the female's urethra. Bile inside of your urine. You should not find bile inside your urine. If you do find bile in your urine, that's a sign that you have hepatitis or cirrhosis of the liver. Is when you find high levels of bile in your urine. This is the explanation of the urethra. So the length is a little bit different between a male and a female, and then location hangs off on a male. Female stays in the walls of the vagina. With men, it runs through the urethra, runs through the prostate. The prostate's what produces the fluid for sperm to swim in. Is basically what it does. So men, you can wind up with something called urinary retention, in which your prostate enlarges. You can kind of think of your prostate like this. If I were to draw out your prostate, so this would be like your prostate gland, okay, that hangs out here. Let's say your prostate's like this, okay, your prostate gland, okay, and then you have your urethra that runs through it like this, okay. If this prostate were to enlarge, it's going to press on the urethra, is what it's going to do, and then this urine isn't going to be able to flow as steadily. Okay, so your urine's going to come out in more of a trickle form, and less likely to have urine come out in a steady stream. That becomes important when you get older. You're more likely to have this enlarged prostate that causes you to have urinary retention. On females, you don't get urinary retention because you don't have a prostate. Now you can get urinary retention from other reasons, like I talked about earlier, with that loss of fat around your kidneys and things like that can cause a kink to occur and then backflow. But I don't think technically that's called urinary retention. Okay. So we get the urethra. We understand that. The bladder itself, okay, so we take a look at the process of urinating. We call it voiding, is the process that we call urination. You have two sphincters that are responsible for this. You have an internal sphincter and an external sphincter. When those open, then that urine is going to flow out of your bladder and then into your urethra, and then from the urethra it goes into the toilet. We take a look at water. Water is vitally important because water is universal solvent. It helps our body maintain its actual body temperature. But water helps lubricate joints, does a whole bunch of things inside of our body that are vitally important. We look at a male's body is about 60% water. Elderly are about 45% water. Females are about 50% water. Babies are 75% water. If you ever notice, the elderly a lot of times can complain about them being cold and stuff like that. One of the reasons the elderly complain about being cold all the time is their body's composed of less water, so they have less of that heat retention that can occur inside of them. The reason that men have more water is because they have more muscles, more muscle mass that you have, the more water retention that you have inside of your body, and plus the fact that they're bigger, they're going to have more water associated with them. So then your next question you're going to ask is Nick or Mr. Plazik, then why do babies, why are they composed of 75% water? They're not bigger. The reason that babies have 75% water is that they have a larger surface area to weight ratio, so they're more likely to lose more water than that of adults, which is why their body is composed of more water. So we talked about the importance of water there. We talked about the hormone that's responsible for water. Those hormones are aldosterone and vasopressin. So you guys know about that. We talked about that a little bit earlier. This is just showing you where we put water at inside of our bodies. Okay, so there's two compartments that we have water at. We have water intracellularly. Okay, that means you have water inside of cells. So most of your water is found in your body inside of cells. And then the other compartment of water that we have is called extracellular, which is outside of cells. Okay, this is just extracellular fluid. And this is like, of this 60%, 20% of it is found extracellularly, 40% is found intracellularly. When we break down extracellular fluid, we have this interstitial fluid. This interstitial fluid is fluid found right outside of cells. And then you have your blood plasma. Blood plasma is the liquid component of your blood, and that composes another component of your extracellular fluid. So you have intracellular fluid and you have extracellular fluid. We talked about water and salt. Okay, we talked about the importance of water and salt. We note that water always follows salt. We talked about the major hormone that's dealing with the actual salt itself. This is just showing us the how our water intake must equal our water output. Okay, so this is where we get water in our body. This is where we lose water. These two things must balance out. Okay, if you have unbalance in one, like I'm overhydrated here, I'm going to lose more water. If I'm underhydrated, I'm going to retain more water. Those types of things. We lose a lot of our water through urine. That's the bulk of the way that we lose water in our body. We gain water by drinking, okay, through beverages and things like that. I talked about these osmoreceptors a little bit earlier. These are these cells in the hypothalamus that are going to detect pressure in the bloodstream. When there is low pressure, they become stimulated. They cause vasopressin to be released. They become more active, and they cause vasopressin to be released. This vasopressin then is going to, or antidiuretic hormone, is going to cause the collecting ducts to produce more water channels, so more water reabsorption is going to occur. We talked about diabetes insipidus. Okay, this can happen in kids a lot of times, and they're constantly urinating. They might be wetting the bed a lot of the times. They're constantly thirsty with it. They have trouble releasing antidiuretic hormone. This is aldosterone. Okay, this is going to control your sodium. Okay, this is going to be produced by your adrenal glands, and it controls the amount of sodium that's being into your bloodstream. So as I age, this is a diagram of the prostate that I talked about a little bit earlier with your prostate gland. You can see here's your prostate gland that's right here. Okay, so men, you get something called urinary retention. There's your prostate. Okay, and if this prostate enlarges, it acts like a kink in a hose. That's what it's going to do, and this urine can't flow freely, is what it can't do. So men, you wind up with something as you age called urinary retention, in which you're retaining your urine. It doesn't come out of as a steady flow. It's a sign that you have an enlarged prostate. Some other things that happen as you age is there's a progressive decline in urinary function. Your bladder is going to shrink. Okay, so my bladder is going to shrink in size. Okay, so if I have a bladder here, this is a normal bladder. Okay, and my bladder shrinks in size over time, so my bladder becomes smaller. Okay, because my bladder becomes smaller, I'm going to have to go more frequently. Okay, so I'm going to have to go more frequently is one thing that I'm going to have to go. Because I have to go more frequently, I wind up with something called nocturia. So because I have to go more frequently, I wind up with something called nocturia. And nocturia is the need to get up and go during the night to urinate. So I have to go more often. If you ever stay at grandma's or grandpa's house at night, you might have noticed that they get up at night to go to the bathroom a lot. That's because their bladders are a lot smaller. Because their bladders are a lot smaller, because they've shrunk over time, they hold less urine, they have to go more often. Okay? The muscles that are associated with that urination, they become weaker over time. Okay? So those muscles that are responsible for urination, they become weaker over time, so you wind up with something called urgency, where you have to go more urgently. Okay, you have to really go because those sphincters can't hold on like they once used to because they become a lot weaker. With that nocturia and that shrinking of the bladder, you go more frequently. Okay, and because you go more frequently, you're going to output less urine, which each and every time that you urinate. Eventually, these muscles, you lose complete control of the muscles and you wind up with incontinence, which is why we have those adult diapers and things like that, like Depends and stuff like that. We call that incontinence when you lose complete control. And then men, you wind up with something called urinary retention, and this is often as a result of an enlargement of the prostate gland. So that wraps up the urinary system. If you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to email me or let me know in class as to what you're struggling in. I think urinary system is super cool. It's one of my favorite organ systems. So don't hesitate to ask any questions that you may have.